I'll start this off by saying this is my second time having made this script. I wrote up my first impressions the day after the raid launched. I was still on the high of clearing it, and then a few days passed, and I thought about it, and I ran it on normal mode a few times, and I realized my opinions had changed quite a bit. I'll apologize for my general tone of voice. I'm still getting over a cold, but I still wanted to make this video while it was still decently relevant. The background footage, if I can get it, should be the raid being cleared on normal mode. You'll see me ripping through ads in record time, as is tradition on normal mode, it seems, but man, I thought this was going to be a lot more positive of a video. I thought it was going to be a lot more exciting. There's a lot of good about this raid, but man, there was a lot that left something to be desired. So let's talk about difficulty overall in here. Let's talk about, well, disappointment that was contest mode. I was able to run around using a grapple melee warlock build for the entirety of the first two encounters, and almost never felt like I was in danger. Now sure, it was a Constantine Armlets build, I had woven mail up, it was just super survivable, but I could grapple melee into packs of like 5-6 plus ads and come out just fine on contest mode? That seems a little excessive. Now at the time, and for a couple days after, I thought it was pretty sick. I was able to use a variety of builds, still clear stuff, but then I realized the other day that I was physically sick throughout the day one raid. Like I had what I believe to be either just like a really intense cold or maybe like just a minor sinus infection or something that's still affecting me a little bit, as you might be able to hear a little. But I had that going on for the entirety of contest mode, and I was still able to use these like high execution builds of like Solar Starfire Warlock. And you might be like, but that's not high execution. It is when you're trying to survive by killing stuff and your teammates are killing everything before you. Or there's high execution Strand Grapple Melee, where if I don't get the melee kill, I start dying. I was able to use those on contest mode and never really struggled outside of the final encounter, and this is because Nezarek's possibility apparently interact with frame rates in a weird way. Can nearly insta-gib you as a result of that, so that's cool. But I mean, I don't know, if that doesn't just like paint the giant picture in the background that just says power creep is becoming a problem, I don't know what does. Because man, I just never felt like I was really in danger, and it's kind of a scary thought. The power scaling of the raid for both contest and normal mode just kind of feels wrong, like just really wrong. Contest felt easier than legendary lost sectors and legendary exotic missions and master nightfalls. You need to tell me that the pinnacle of coordinated 6-man content and a difficulty that only comes around once a year, maybe twice a year if there's a reprised raid. You mean to tell me that isn't as stressful as soloing a lost sector, something that you're supposed to be farming for exotic drops? I mentioned that I was using that grapple strand melee build, right? I said that. I had to not use that in the exotic mission on legendary difficulty because I was dying too frequently. I didn't have that problem in the contest mode raid though. I want to be brutally honest on this one. Normal mode is kind of a joke. DPS checks aren't there, the ad density isn't enough to warrant how little damage they do, the ad danger isn't there, and you just don't feel threatened. When I'm doing the raid now, on normal mode, I just put on strand and grapple melee around everywhere, and I sword swipe around everywhere, and I only put on rockets during the final two bosses, and even then I'd still kind of considered not putting on rockets and just memeing with shotguns or something because it's kind of a joke. And while, yeah, you can be like, well, yeah, but like you could do that in some of the older raids back in Destiny 1, or you can kind of do that in Scourge of the Past. You're not wrong, but it's not something that I'm happy about. Bungie had started making raids that were of a higher standard for a little bit. Vow of the Disciple had started really like pushing the idea of what I thought they could do in Destiny raids. I thought Deepstone Crypt was another great example of, sure, you had to go ham with swords on Atrax, but there's still a decent amount of mechanical complexity to what was happening in this raid. Didn't even have the mechanical complexity to back up that interesting difficulty curve. But that's what we're going to be talking about next. Oh boy, mechanics. Let's talk about how little there is to the mechanics of Ron. During the first encounter, only one person needs to be doing the mechanics, and it is literally playing Connect the Dots. One person. Connect the dots. Bungie. This isn't a dungeon. You're making 5 people just slay out and kill ads during this encounter. Sure, don't get me wrong, there is technically that you have to find scions and kill them, and then you kill the tormentor afterwards to extend your timers, but these aren't the boss tormentors that can't get suspended with Strand. You can suspend them and just have the entire team unload on them. And sure, technically you can add a second person to play and connect the dots, but if they're doing it too fast, they'll interfere with the mechanic and actually make it go slower in the long run, which is just disappointing. I feel like it probably should have been required to have two people doing it from the get-go in order to make the speed of it work out, otherwise you ran out of time. But I don't know. It feels a little disappointing to have that first encounter be so straightforward and simple. Second encounter is a step up. You do have to have two people playing the connect the dots. It is required. The team is split into two teams, so you only really have 4 people on ad clear. And quite often you had to have people picking up an extra buff in order to kill certain enemy types to progress the encounter more effectively. So overall, the second encounter was a step up. I still think that should have been like the baseline for the first encounter, and the second encounter should have been even harder with more complex mechanics, but maybe I'm just asking for a lot. Overall, I don't feel like every raid needs to be a Vow of the Disciple, where you need to remember 7 symbols' names and type them in raid chat in order to actually do the mechanic properly, but it would be nice if it was a little more complex than playing Connect the Dots. Boss 1 was actually kind of fun. Valis something. Explicator of Planets, I think. I don't know. It was a cool encounter, though. I actually did really enjoy it. The mechanic wasn't too complex. It was basically, all right, which planets are on the wrong side? Let's swap them out with each other. Okay, which planets need to be moved to the center? Let's move from there. DPS. Pretty straightforward as boss, but it was overall a really fun mechanic. It felt really intuitive to figure it out. The problem really came when there were so many orange enemies inside the encounter. The bricks from beyond just vomited ammo everywhere. I got to the point where in contest mode, there was a handful of us using rockets for ad clear to get to DPS faster because there was just so many bricks of heavy on the ground. Listen, Bungie, maybe you should have put a little clause on Bricks from Beyond that says this doesn't trigger in raids and dungeons. Because, man, there was so much heavy ammo that I couldn't have used it all if I tried. That's a little disappointing. I did overall enjoy the encounter, though. I think the boss one was pretty fun. I think it was fairly straightforward. I would have appreciated maybe a little more mechanical complexity. Maybe you have to swap the planets properly one time, and then there's another mechanic that you have to do, and then you just move them into the middle to start DPS. But I can't complain too much. I don't mind a little more light on the mechanics front. But overall, it was a good encounter. Nezrak was cool. Overall, Nezrak was really fun. You gotta go fast, you gotta go hard, you gotta push it to really get to DPS. If you're like us and you didn't realize you were doing it on hard mode, there's a way to avoid his wipe mechanic. My group, like many of the groups that cleared within the first couple hundred groups, didn't realize that that was a mechanic. We just brute forced it by speedrunning our Connect the Dots players. We were just like, yeah, no, we're just going to go fast enough to do it. And we just did it that way. That was a really fun way to do the raid. Honestly, if that was the only way to do Nezrak, I would have been okay with it. It would have been a nice difficulty spike for the final boss that I would have been a massive fan of. I did it again on contest the next day with actually using the refuges in order to not die from his wipe. And it took so much pressure off that I'm not going to lie, it made me feel a little disappointed. I was a little saddened that, oh, this just got so much easier. I do wish that Nezrak had a little more health. According to some napkin math that I saw floating around the internet, and this is napkin math, so don't take this as at face value, apparently Nezrak has around 9 million-ish health. Close to 10 million, I believe. Which is a little higher than Atheon. But War Priest, for comparison's sake, has about 18 million health. Now, everyone knows that War Priest was a slog, and he had so much health that it was almost not fun sometimes, but I do wish that the final boss of the raid had a little more health than like Atheon did, because Atheon's kind of a pushover, but you also have so much crap going on in Atheon. During the Nezrak fight, you plant your well on one of the little platforms, he stands in front of you pounding the ground, and you just kind of vibe and kill him. Now, that says a lot about Well of Radiance, much more so than the encounter design itself. However, it does still kind of disappoint you. Now, this has all been incredibly critical of the mechanics and very derivative of bringing it down to its base value. Do I think the raid's fun? Yeah. No, I legitimately think this is a fun raid. I think these mechanics are actually well-designed mechanics. I just wish there was a little more meat to them. It feels like the first pass of a raid mechanic, or like maybe just a dungeon mechanic. But I just wanted it to be a little more complex. I don't wish every raid is a Vow the Disciple or a King's Fall where you need to remember 50 symbols and have communication going up at all times. I just wish it was at least the level of complexity of Deepstone, where, think of the first encounter, for example. Even if you're not playing Operator or Scanner, you still have to shoot the pillars in the middle. You're not just ad clearing. With the first encounter of Vow, for example, you're just ad clearing. Alright, let's talk about the dangerous word, the one everyone hates to hear, or everyone loves to use way too much, power creep. The elephant in the room. I have a lot to say about this right now, and I'm going to start by just saying, we as players and as guardians are too strong right now. We are. It is undeniable that players are way too powerful right now. Builds are more powerful than they have ever been, with the barrier of entry being lower than ever, and they just changed the seasonal artifact mods to be more powerful than they've ever been as well, making builds even stronger. Let's put this in perspective. During the Nezarec boss fight, I was soloing essentially 1/3 of the ads by myself. I was on the left side of the arena, killing all the ads by myself using a double special weapon build where I never ran out of ammo, and I was just gaining super energy back so fast I couldn't keep track. I was running Starfire Protocol. Starfire Protocol gives you 2 sticky grenades, right? I timed myself on my clear VOD. I hit start on my timer when I put down my well for DPS in Nezarec. 90 seconds later, I had another well. 90 seconds, a minute and a half. Because of being able to just slay out using double ashes to assets and sticky nades and making orbs, I was able to get my well back in 90 seconds. I wasn't using Phoenix Protocol. I wasn't using the exotic that is dedicated to getting my super back. I was just running a very powerful build. I got my super back in 90 seconds. This is post the changes that decreased super cooldowns. And I know Well's one of the shortest cooldowns in the game, but Well's also the most broken super in the game. Healing, damage reduction, weapon damage boost. Got it back in 90 seconds. Let's talk about build crafting. I talked about it earlier. My Strand Warlock Grapple Melee. I heal on melee, and I make 2 Orbs of Power, which heal me upon picking them up, and I get Woven Mail, which I believe is a 60% damage reduction, allowing me to combo off and do it again. And I almost get my grapple back immediately afterwards. Now, this is a full build. These are full spec'd into builds where I am all about what I am doing. But I still feel like it's too much. I shouldn't be a one-man wrecking crew all on my lonesome. Because you're multiplying that by 6. If I'm able to do that on my own, and all of my other teammates are able to do that on their own, there needs to be so many ads that the sun is blotted out by the sheer piles of bodies around us. And I haven't even talked about the boots mods. The weapon surges. Did you know that you can get 22% bonus damage for picking up an Orb of Power? I'm sure it sacrifices all the mods on your boots, but like 22% bonus damage? And we're currently in a meta where you just throw down a Well of Radiance for DPS. That makes 3 orbs, which means you get your 22% bonus damage, and you get 3 stacks of it that lasts like 10 seconds a stack without time dilation and 15 seconds a stack with it. So that's either 30 or 45 seconds of just 22% weapon damage boost that stacks with well and weaken debuffs. Power creep is a real problem right now, and I think this raid showed it off much more than the other ones. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the raid has other problems with mechanical complexity, but I think power creep is some real major stuff that is happening right now in Destiny. And I think Bungie really needs to get a handle on this. Now, let's bring it back down to normal levels here for these closing thoughts. This raid is legitimately fun. I don't want all of my complaints and negativities to take away from that fact. I legitimately think this is a very fun raid. I feel like it's going to be a very fun mess around, troll your teammates, try and shove them off the map with Eco Edge style of raid. Not every raid needs to be a mechanical powerhouse. Not every raid needs you to remember 25 different symbol names and be able to see what your teammates are doing at all times and constantly counting down the timers that are on your screens like Vow or King's Fall or anything like that. This raid reminds me a lot of Scourge of the Past. It was just kind of a mad dash to the finish all the way through on that raid. But here's something to keep in mind. Scourge of the Past is a 5-year-old raid. Scourge of the Past came out before Crown of Sorrow or Last Wish. We didn't have the tools we had now back then. Builds have massively grown in power since then. And it feels a little bit like a regression to go from your Last Wishes and Deepstone Crypts and Vow of the Disciples and updated King's Falls back to what is essentially a Scourge of the Past again. Now am I totally put out by this? No, I love getting new raids. Raids are amazingly fun. They're my favorite pieces of content in the game. And I love being able to just mess around and meme on them and put on some crazy strong build and just rip it to shreds and try and clear it in 15 minutes or something. Do I think it could have been a little more mechanically complex? Absolutely. Do I want Bungie to do better than this in the future? Please, yes. Do I think this is a fluke? I don't know. I don't know if I think this is a fluke. I kind of hope this was a bit of a fluke. I hope this isn't what we're going to see again in the final shape. I hope the final shape comes out and the new raid is properly tuned difficulty-wise to be challenging with mechanics that are enough of a puzzle that I'm not figuring it out in like 30 seconds. And that I hope that the boss DPS phase is a little more exciting than, hey, everyone group up on this little plate here so Nezarec can't melee us. And I'm going to end this by saying that I'm just voicing some of my disappointments and feelings towards the raid. Because I'm someone who gets really excited for contest mode raiding because it's something that doesn't happen very often. And it's a really cool experience to go in with your friends and be able to beat something that's genuinely difficult in this game. I don't want to take away anyone's like personal pride in being able to clear this raid on contest. Contest mode is still not easy. It's not. It really is not easy no matter what I say about the less difficulty than previous raids. I don't want to take away your pride and joy in accomplishing something. I just wanted it to be more challenging because I enjoy the challenge of contest mode, and I really believe that contest mode raiding is supposed to be that, challenging. I felt like this didn't really live up to the difficulty of King's Fall or Vow of the Disciple or any of the last few raids we've gotten. And overall, contest mode and that release portion of the raid felt a little mediocre. A little bit mid. And after the little disappointments I've had here and there with Lightfall, I was really hoping that this raid would blow my mind and blow me away and really drag me in and make me want to grind this out every week and figure out the optimizations, but man, it's not looking good. I really hoped that after Season of the Seraph, Bungie was going to keep this win streak of theirs going. Where like they were making good content, making good stories, making good end game stuff, and I'm not so sure they kept the streak going. Overall, I did have fun. I'm going to continuously run this raid on the regular with my friends. But I was just hoping for something a little more. But that's it. That's the video. Thanks for hanging out and watching. I hope you liked it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to catch you in the next one.